Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast, episode 16. And this is by far probably going to be our longest episode. We don't have any would you rathers, hot takes at the end. We just have a shit ton of trades, a shit ton of NHL news that has gone down in the last week or so. We did the podcast Sunday last week because we had those trades. We thought, we'll return to the normal Tuesday schedule. We're back on Sunday because there's just so much has happened that we want to get it to you now instead of Tuesday. Babiak, how the hell are we doing?
I feel it's fun that we're not able to talk about movies this time because things actually happen.
Yeah,
let's get into it.
We're not going to be reacting to Oscar nominations. We're talking about the upcoming Grammys or shit. We actually got hockey to talk about, and we're going to start, of course, with the JT Miller trade to the New York Rangers. We're just going to combine the two with Marcus Pettersson because they basically are a two-part trade. They could have easily just been one big three-team trade, considering the New York's first-round pick was involved in every single one. So, yeah. Rangers get JT Miller, Eric Bransham, who has great underlying numbers. Maybe it could be something, but has been undersized and consistently can't really find a role in the NHL. The Canucks get Pettersson, Hedl, and they get off the Desharnais and Danton Heinen contracts that were 2 years, $2 million for Desharnais. He was a number 6, number 7 defenseman, so good to move off that, as well as Heinen, which is like a replaceable bottom sixer. And then the Pittsburgh Penguins basically get the first round pick from the New York Rangers that's top 13 protected. You want to go first? Because I'm sure a lot of people have already seen my videos on the trades and so on.
Yeah, I'll dive in here. So the boring answer is we won't know who's a winner or a loser until we actually know what the draft pick is, right? Because it could make a huge difference. If it's the 27th overall pick, that means the Rangers had a phenomenal year with JT Miller. Good for them. I think most likely the winner of this trade will end up being the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think it's absolutely possible that the pick for the Rangers is top 13, gets pushed out to next year. Penguins potentially getting the lottery pick of a division rival for Marcus Pettersson, who is, he's not the most amazing player in the world. A lottery first-round pick is better than a late first-round pick for him. It's better than I would expect. So really, I like it for them the most. For the Rangers and the Canucks, I'm kind of worried about it being a lose-lose. It could be a win-win, but I really don't know. I think JT Miller's good. He's good at hockey. Really, the risk there is that the Rangers do what they did yesterday against Boston, where JT Miller can be a very good hockey player and still have it not matter for their playoff hopes at all. We saw that yesterday. He scores 2 goals. The team gets blown out and embarrassed. It's really rough.
Yeah, I tweeted out basically something like that, them losing 5-2. It ended up being 6-3, but JT Miller having those 2 goals perfectly embody why I don't think that this is that good of a trade for the New York Rangers. I think on face value, if the Rangers were a legit contender and needed more forward help, it would have been a great deal. Getting JT Miller for a first round pick and Philip Hedl, who when he's healthy is a good player, but there's just far too much uncertainty with his injuries. I think for the top 10 teams in the entire NHL, if they do this and bet on JT Miller, I probably like it a decent amount. But for the New York Rangers that already had such an old core, you can make the argument, considering Lafreniere has been very disappointing of late, that their 5 best forwards are now 31 or older and all locked up long term. So if they were safely in a playoff spot this year, I'd say go for it. But at this point, I think most models have them at 30 to 35%, and especially after yesterday's loss to the Boston Bruins, to potentially just miss the playoffs. And then, yes, you'd have JT Miller for the full season next year, but everybody gets older a year later. You look at Artemi Panarin is only putting up 89-point pace right now, making $11.64 million. So, again, the Rangers definitely got better today, but it doesn't address their clear defensive problems. I think if they gave up a first-round pick to get Marcus Pettersson, although JT Miller is a far better player when he's at his best than Pettersson, he's a lot older, 4 or 5 years older. He has longer on his contract and just isn't really a fit in New York. For the Canucks, clearly they're still trying to win. They're still trying to make the playoffs this season. Given the context of what happened with JT Miller that we've gone over 9,000 times, I think considering their lack of leverage, I do think that this is a solid return. Yes, if in the offseason, if they traded a 3-team deal, JT Miller for Pettersson and Hedl, we'd say, what the hell? That's a horrible trade. But I think given the context, the locker room was deteriorating. They had to do something. And we thought initially with this trade that Lindgren was going to be involved, and if he was involved, maybe the Rangers win that game on Saturday against the Boston Bruins, because I think he was on the ice for 5 of those goals. But for Vancouver, Hopefully they lock up Pettersson on something relatively cheap. Because I think on the open market he'd get like a Brady Shea kind of deal. Hopefully they can get him sub $7 million. He's been awesome. I can read out the numbers that I posted, I think, on my Substack. Last 4 seasons, he had a 54.7 expected goals percentage, which was 4th on the team, 56.1, which was 3rd, 52.9, which was 6th, and 55.1 this season. He's been the Pittsburgh Penguins' best defenseman the last 2 years, I would say, for their team. Very underrated guy that's not going to get the appreciation. Hopefully he will now in Vancouver. Maybe not even still, because he'll be not even playing on the power play like he did in Pittsburgh. But he's a very good player. He's a very good player, so I do like it to a degree for Vancouver. And as you mentioned, I think it's a home run for the Pittsburgh Penguins because there's a sizable chance that this pick is 14th through 18th. Some people were shocked that Pettersson got a first-round pick. I expected him to get a first-round pick, but I expected it from like a contending team. I expected it to be a guaranteed pick that was going to be 24.
A Dallas type late.
Yeah, which we're about to get into.
Yeah.
But yeah, you expected some kind of late first. The fact that they might be picking 4th and 14th in this upcoming draft, even though this draft isn't really that good, especially falls off after that top 10. It's awesome work by Kyle Dubas, and it's just good to know that they're yet again kind of selling on this season instead of trying to like hodgepodge something in terms of making one Crosby run.
Yeah, I would not at all be surprised, like I said, if this kind of ends up as a lose-lose for the main teams involved, but a home run for the Penguins. I think that's reasonably likely. As far as the Canucks go, I mean, Hedl is what you said, right? It's when he's healthy, when he's playing consistently in a good role, we've seen 2C potential. We haven't seen him do that for even like 40 games in a row ever, play at that level, but the potential's there. The most important player the Canucks are getting in this trade, to be clear, is Elias Pettersson, because he needs to get going, right? There's been so much criticism of JT Miller the past, few months with all this locker room drama. The fact of the matter is, since the start of calendar year 2024, JT Miller has been a better player than Elias Pettersson. That's just a fact. It is what it is. So, we have seen Pettersson play at that really high level. He hasn't played at that level in about a year, so they really need him to step it up, right? We have the 2 guys fighting. We clearly picked one guy. Now you need to step up and show you're the man, show that you're worth your huge contract, that you can be that 100-point guy again. Because the one way this looks really embarrassing for Vancouver, right, is if JT Miller goes to New York and he's a better player in New York than Elias Pettersson is in Vancouver. And I think Miller might be. JT Miller is 1 year removed from a 100-point season. He gets a lot of criticism for his defensive play this year, but we've seen him be a good 2-way player, right? When he's engaged, when he's locked in, when he's in a place, in a locker room, a coaching system where he wants to be, he can be a really good forechecker, really physical. Miller is good. I have no doubts that he's like a bad contract or anything for the Rangers going forward, although you do have to question it, like you said, in the context of this is an old and expensive team. I've seen some social media takes. Well, it makes sense if you get rid of Mika Zibanejad. How do you expect to do that? Maybe he can. Drury has gotten rid of worse contracts than Zibanejad's, but Zibanejad right now is on a contract that he's not worth. It's long-term. He has a no-movement clause. I don't understand how you expect to just magically make that money go away. So now it's like, okay, you're paying 3 pretty expensive centers, like you said, all over 30. That's not a great position to be in if the most important guys to your franchise are Igor and Fox, who are both pretty young.
Yeah, with that forward core, Zibanejad. You look at a Trouba, he only had a season and a half left. You can convince some kind of dumb general manager to take him on, as well as Barclay Goodrow. The relationship between Greer and Drury, and Barclay Goodrow had priorly played there. I can't imagine anybody being willing to take on that Zibanejad contract at full price or without getting, at the bare minimum, a first-round pick because, as you mentioned, 5 years left after this. It's not like there's 2 to 3 years left. He's a guy that's going to be near impossible to move, in my opinion. If you're going to have to take something on or attach something to him. It's an interesting strategy. I think the New York Rangers probably should be a playoff team next year, but unless they do something serious on the back end, which, again, I'm not sure if they're going to have a ton of cap space to do so, considering they're taking on the JT Miller $8 million, the Shesterkin deal kicks in, the Lafreniere deal kicks in, though we maybe don't think is that good of a deal at this point. They need to do something massive with the defense core, and Keandre Miller still needs a contract. Will Borgen's pay goes up next year. It's going to be really interesting. This seems to just be a desperation move by Chris Drury in terms of just trying to save his job this season. And again, I'm not even ruling out that they can't go on some type of deep run because, think the East is pretty weak outside of the Florida Panthers, but I'm not sure it's going to work. And at this point, I think they're probably more likely to miss the playoffs than make it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. They might make it. Igor Shesterkin is the best goalie out of any of the bubble teams, depending on Linus Ullmark's health and consistency.
So Ottawa might not be no bubble team anymore.
There. They might not be. Yeah,
they're
they're up in the 7th seed now, kind of comfortably.
Atlantic spot, I think.
Ooh, yes. They passed Tampa yesterday.
Back of Tony D'Angelo.
But yeah, so it's tough to see a path forward for the Rangers long term. I'm not sure they will be a playoff team next year because I don't know how they make the current squad better. I don't think Miller is like a long-term. I think Miller makes them better, but I don't think that's a long-term answer. Like you said, the real problem is the D core, and what are you going to build around Fox and Miller? Because right now they don't seem to have a whole lot. I do give credit to Vancouver because the original trade that everyone saw had Ryan Lindgren going to Vancouver. That's a negative asset. Vancouver should not want Ryan Lindgren, and good for them for being able to pull off this trade without having to take on Ryan Lindgren. The Rangers have been dumping so much bad money, it feels like, for free, right? Trouba and Barclay Goodrow both gone, and they just get away with it for free.
They got a 4th-round pick to do that in total.
They did not get away with giving up Ryan Lindgren for free. They're stuck with him right now. So that's, considering the circumstances, I think Vancouver did as well as you could hope. Because, like I said, too, once Carolina got their guy, I'm not sure how many realistic trade partners were even left out there.
Yeah, and I even think this summer, I'm trying to think of the available unrestricted free agents. Like, they don't have the money to give Provorov some kind of massive deal. Pettersson's most likely going to stay put in Vancouver with him expiring. So, yeah, they're going to have to get creative with some kind of trade. And that, if they want to make an actual impact guy, the only real valuable asset they have, I guess they could dip into their 2026 first-round pick. But besides that, it's really Gabe Perreault if they want to immediately. And Gabe Perreault hopefully will join the team at the end of the season and maybe show something. But if not, he's really the only asset that they have. Will Cooley, I guess, but with how cool he has been, pun intended, the last 2 to 3 months after you really thought that he was going to be something, and he still can be a very effective middle sixer, good second liner maybe. But yeah, they don't have a ton of cap flexibility. They don't have a ton of assets now that they don't have their first round pick. It's just, they're a very talented team, but they just don't play together as a team, and the defense core is so bad.
Yeah, I look at the roster, and to me, the only guy currently in there who makes sense as a trade piece is Keandre Miller. If you think you're not going to have the money to re-sign him, you can do a kind of like wheel play where you trade Miller's rights to someone for a first-round pick and then use that to acquire a player you want. We've seen similar type moves happen in the NHL before, so it's possible. But I don't see how trading Miller for another defenseman is going to really end up making them like noticeably better.
Yeah, and that if they trade for Miller, it's going to be for some defenseman that's probably 29, 30 years old and has some kind of term. So then you're just yet again limiting your window. I think they genuinely have at most like a 3-year window now. I understand Adam Fox is still 26, turning 27, I think, relatively soon. Shesterkin's 29 years old. But yeah, like you thought this time a year ago, maybe that they would eventually transition into that Capo Caco, Lafreniere, Hedl, Cooley, Miller, and some other guys, Gabe Perreault. But that's just kind of evaporated at this point, considering how lackluster Miller has been. Capo Caco, Hedl traded, as well as Cooley and Lafreniere playing bad. It's just, I guess they have to go for it now, but they've just really mismanaged this second generation. You thought Zibanejad, Kreider, Panarin, they're going to give us a couple good years, and then we'll just replace it with young guys, and we're New York. We can maybe sign some, and maybe they could attract some kind of big name. But yeah, it's looking like it's going to be 2 to 3 years, and then they're going to need some kind of heavy retool, unless, of course, Connor McDavid or somebody ridiculous like that is willing to come to New York. The future isn't looking that bright in terms of a 5-year outlook, and I'm an Islanders fan. I know you guys would all have to say it as an Islanders fan. It's the dumbest thing ever. I got killed across this weekend being like, Islander fans speaking up is crazy. I didn't assemble the goddamn Islanders roster, and they're mid as hell. But yeah, and it takes one to know one. So yeah, I think the Rangers are honestly looking like the Islanders now and maybe for the next 2 to 3 years. They definitely have more star power, but in terms of just older guys that are kind of overpaid and locked in.
Yeah, I guess like you said, the hope for the Rangers realistically is maybe Panarin leaves and now you have the cap space to sign a huge deal free agent and you get one that wants to come to New York and that works out for you. Because that seems right now like the only way to grow the team. you say they have a 2 to 3 year window. I think if they miss this year, the window is like 0 years. Like the window of this current Kreider, Zibanejad, Panarin era is shut, and you're going to need to move off of those guys, get new guys in to create a new window for yourself.
I think next year they can be decent. It will require some type of move with the defense score, but I still think that those guys aren't going to completely fall off. And I think, although Zibanejad and Kreider are old, I think they will play slightly better. So I think next year they could have a shot, but beyond that, I don't know. Once those guys start hitting the key ages of regression at 33, 34, 35, it's going to be very interesting for the New York Rangers in the next couple of years. You want to move on to the Flames and the Flyers deal?
Sure.
Okay, we had another, well, this was before that, a day before. There was a big deal with the Flyers and the Flames with Joel Farabee, Morgan Frost heading to Calgary for Andrei Kuzmenko, Jacob Pelletier, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, and a 2025 second and a 2028 7th-round pick. I came out kind of swinging on this just because for the Flames, it seems kind of a move that's going to keep them somewhat mediocre in terms of acquiring guys that are 24 and 25, and I looked up, both of them turned 25 and 26 like relatively soon. So mid-20 guys that are going to be very valuable pieces, but for a Calgary Flames team that I think is going to be just battling for a wild card spot the next couple of years, they're going to have to really hit on some draft picks. I've warmed up to it more because, again, it is good value to give up just a 2nd-round pick for 2 guys that could be good second liners for your team. I don't think I would give it a C+. I would give it a B- or B at this point. But I still, I warmed up to it more so just because I realized that Dustin Wolf is too good to kind of tank in the near term as much as you maybe would want to stink this year. He's just been a sensation, so you definitely take that compared to every facet of the team sucking this year and looking like a Chicago Blackhawks out there. But yeah, I don't love the idea of Calgary just kind of hovering around this. They're going to need to somehow hit on some late first, if they're mid first, to get a franchise forward, because I don't think Calgary's going to track some guy in free agency or trades. It's going to be interesting. But in terms of right now, this is obviously a massive upgrade in terms of talent. For the Calgary Flames, the Philadelphia Flyers, I do like that they are choosing to just kind of stink this year, maybe even next year as well, because last year we saw with them battling for a playoff spot, ended up having 12th overall, traded back, got a mediocre prospect, in my opinion, in Jet Luchenko, and didn't get that potential defenseman or forward to pair with Matvei Michkov. It's looking like hopefully they can do that this year. So I like it for both parties at this point. I'd probably give Bs or B- for both of them. What do you think?
I like it a lot for the Flames. I hear what you're saying about overall franchise windows and the need to get star players in. So, I mean, that holds me back from saying I love it, but just as a pure, like, value in, value out, I like it a lot for the Flames, and I hate it and don't understand it at all for the Flyers, really, yeah. I look at Frost and I look at Farabee. There are 2 young-ish guys who have scored, 40 points, 50 points without top power play time in a mostly defensive system.
I think Farabee was on the top power play.
Farabee's been up and down 1 and 2.
This year has been tough, but yeah.
He's been slumping this year mostly off the top. Tort's playing a very defensive system. These guys have potential, I think. You give them the minutes, you give them the roles, maybe you get them up to a 50 to 60 point player. I expect mild improvement from Frost. I expect Farabee to bounce back to what he was as a 40 to 50 point wing. And then, worst case scenario, you can ship them out 2 or 3 years from now for a lot more in assets than you spent on them. Calgary gets younger in this trade somehow, so I like that for them. The 2nd-round pick is good. Like you said, it's going to be a mid-2nd-round pick, not super valuable, so that's all good. Kuzmenko is a negative asset at this point. They get, to me, and, Calgary wouldn't pay a draft pick to get rid of Kuzmenko because they don't need the cap room and they're not really contending like that. But if a contending team up to the cap ceiling did need to get rid of Kuzmenko, a 2nd-round pick probably would be the price for that. He's been awful this year, and he seems like an awful fit, especially for the Torts system, right?
He's friends with Michkov.
Michkov is barely surviving in Philadelphia under Torts. Kuzmenko will not last a week without being dogged on, healthy scratch, all of that. So for Philly, I don't really understand what you're doing here. Maybe the appeal is Jacob Pelletier, but he's.
I think moving off the Farabee contract is what they really value here. I forgot to mention that. Just having the flexibility, and now they have 7 picks within the top 51 or maybe 52. I don't know how it changed in the past couple of days, but yeah, they have a metric shit ton of. I think they're going to maybe take a swing on like a big name to give Michkov that maybe franchise center. Not sure who it's going to be. Pettersson, someone else maybe emerges. I think that's the logic just for Philadelphia. Have more flexibility, and while Frost and Farabee were good Flyers, did show flashes, they have better in terms of players right now, and as well as guys coming up within the system that they want to eventually give minutes to. So I do like it for Philadelphia. It's all about, and for me, micro and macro with this. I think micro, it's obviously a massive win for the Calgary Flames. They get the best 2 players. But I think macro, I do like this for Philadelphia.
I don't. I mean, I look at the package they got in, and, Farabee was a decent player who, if you traded him 2 years ago, would have a lot more value than this, right? We're not disputing that here.
Yeah.
If you trade Farabee 2 summers ago,
I think Torts is definitely tanks some of his value, but I think some of it's definitely on him. He's not been finishing at the same rate. Like it has definitely been a disappointing season, but other guys in Philadelphia are playing pretty damn good. I would not solely put this on John Tortorella. I think at this point, the contract was kind of negative value. It's definitely a good reclamation project for the Calgary Flames. We can both agree on that. But yeah, to act like it's Joel Farabee a year or two ago, just pencil that in that he's going to return to 50 point. I can't quite go there. And even at 50 points at $5 million, just like okay value. Maybe with the cap going up, it'll be solid, but it's not like some slam dunk.
yeah, but if Farabee's a bad contract, what's Kuzmenko at that point? I
But
understand
he's expiring.
Kuzmenko's
He's
is shorter.
expiring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's. I mean Morgan Frost too, right? That was a first-round pick from Philly.
Both of them were
touted
first-round
with high
picks.
potential for a while. And, it was a few years and it felt like he wasn't really taking that next step. And, starting towards last year and this year, it feels like he is, improving somewhat. I don't think he's ever going to be a 1C. I'm not saying
He's a
that.
defensive
I'm not
2C,
saying he's
yeah.
ever going to be like truly worth that first round pick, maybe. But it still does feel like bad asset management to me if this is the best package you could get centered around Morgan Frost. Like maybe if you hold him for deadline day or the summer or something,
That
you
is
can get a
interesting that
first
they
round pick
didn't.
from someone else for him.
Yeah, that he would have been a very interesting deadline just on his own. So I do agree with that. I think he can be a low end second line center on Calgary. He will be the second line center, more so of a contending team's defensive 3C, which teams need. That's an important role.
Yeah,
to fill.
it's, I look at a bunch of contending teams: Edmonton, Vegas. There's quite a few teams. Minnesota probably could use another center in there. Eriksson Ek's pretty good at the defensive center role, but you can always use more of those guys. Frost is cheap. There's no contract issues there. It seems like really bad asset management from Philly to me. Over, frankly, a 2 or 3 year window of, other than the Michkov pick falling into their lap, it feels like nearly every move the Flyers have made
got
in the
fucked on
last
the
2
Cutter
or 3
Gauthier,
years
though. They got
have been
fucked
bad
on that.
moves.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of an incomplete deal because I do think there's no way they draft all 7 picks in the top 51. That would be like malpractice. You just have too many prospects that you can't sign all of them to ELCs. So I think something else is coming. I know that that's kind of like a cop-out, but I can't really fully look at this trade until we're in July and I see what the Philadelphia Flyers end up doing with these picks. If they end up packaging a bunch to get packaging the 2 late firsts and 2 seconds to move up to 11th overall or something like that. Philadelphia is just loading up to have the assets in the cap space to hopefully do something big, because right now I can't really believe in a Michkov, Konechny, and Jet Luchenko core, but if they go out and get some stud and then they add it and then they get a top 6 pick this year, I think that's a serious core that can maybe actually be a serious threat in the Eastern Conference in 2 to 3 years.
I strongly disagree, honestly. I think they need a lot more pieces
No,
than
no,
just 2 summers
yeah.
worth of picks. And
I'm not saying next year they would immediately be good. They still probably need 1 more year of sneaking it up, but that 4-man core and then building it out around that, hopefully that some of the other prospects will develop.
maybe, but I don't think Philly's drafted well. I don't think they've traded well in recent years. So I don't really... I frankly, I just don't believe in them. I don't believe that they'll use these.
I think they did
late
really
firsts
good
and
on the
seconds
they
to
did
be
great on the
effective there.
Provorov trade though.
I mean,
They got a first.
debatably,
They got a first in Sean Walker. They got rid of Cal Peterson, and then they flipped Walker for a first. It's great. There's great value. They got 2 firsts basically to get off of Ivan Provorov, only retaining like a little bit. I agree. There's been some sus moves in Philadelphia, mainly not taking Ziv Boyum and trading back a pick for like a 3rd rounder and taking high floor, low ceiling Jet Luchenko. But I think Briere has done a pretty solid job.
Even though it's just to keep hammering this away, not to, but looking at Provorov, it's when Philly was trading him, it was like, oh, Provorov's a negative asset, bad contract. We need to try to get rid of him. It felt like from a fan perspective. And now in Columbus, it's like, here's the biggest prize asset of the trade deadline. You can't convince me that Torts wasn't lowering his trade value.
He was miscast in Philadelphia as a number one. He's playing 21 minutes in Columbus as a number two, and Dean Evison, I think, is a better coach than John Tortorella. And also just the market. Last year, he'd be the number 4 or number 5 defenseman on the market. I think that does somewhat factor in. Hanifin, Tanev, Sean Walker, arguably last year, were better than Provorov right now. So I think context is needed on that. But I definitely get what you're saying on the Flyers front. I've warmed up to it. I was definitely a Flames hater, even though that graphic, the trade, the C+, is definitely going to live in infamy now. Probably go with B's for both sides. Okay, we're moving on now with another trade that happened like 24 hours ago. Mikael Granlund and Cody Ceci heading to the Dallas Stars for a first and a fourth-round pick that could become a third-round pick if the Dallas Stars make the Cup final. I don't think we're going to be disagreeing too much on this one. I think it's a pretty standard win-win. Dallas, Sagan's out potentially for multiple rounds of the playoffs, might not even return to begin with that kind of hip injury. They get Granlund, whose numbers are maybe a little bit inflated on a San Jose Sharks team where he is required to do so much, play so much, and the offense is kind of run through him to a degree. But I think on Dallas can be a very effective second-line center, maybe they throw him on the wing or something like that. He's going to be a really good player for Dallas. Dallas is no doubt going to finish with at least 100 points, probably 105, so that pick's only going to be 25th probably at the earliest. I really like this for Dallas. For San Jose, with the retention spots that they had to deal with to get this done still for a first-round pick, very good as well. We talked about it before. Maybe you should have kept Granlund to kind of develop the guys, but as we're also going to talk about later with the salary cap going up, I think he probably would have been asking for too much term. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, not too much disagreement here, I don't think. San Jose, I was a big advocate of, maybe keep Granlund around because it's super clear that he is helping the development of the other guys to have like a good, consistent veteran who's a talented offensive player on the ice with them. How much is the 27th overall pick going to help San Jose in this big picture rebuild? I really have no idea. It might not help much at all. But this is like, a good value for what you'd expect. As far as Dallas is concerned, I'm not sure if Granlund is really the piece they should have used their first round pick on. I mean, I think Granlund's a good player. He is inconsistent though, right? He was great in Minnesota, very up and down in Nashville, truly awful in Pittsburgh for half a season, very good in San Jose. So it's kind of like, which Granlunds are you going to get? And there's also the question of like, was using your first round pick to trade this year on a forward a good call? Because maybe you need defense more with Heiskanen out. I mean, they got Cody Ceci back. I don't understand why any contending team would want Cody Ceci in 2025.
Because Matt Dumba's their third right-handed defenseman right now.
It's really rough, the defense now. And I understand that's temporary, right, with Heiskanen's injury. But maybe you would want to use that pick to get a defenseman. Is there any defenseman as impactful as Granlund's left, especially once Pettersson was gone? I doubt it. I think Granlund will be a nice addition probably, although again, there's the risk he just doesn't fit in at all because we have seen that before. We've seen a contender bring in Mikael Granlund, and he does not fit at all.
Pittsburgh wasn't exactly a contender, but yeah.
They weren't in a great spot.
He helped them miss the playoffs. If anything, he took them out of the playoffs. I think that, not that this was a panic move, but I think Dallas also probably realized that after Pettersson got traded, there's not a lot of rentals out there anymore. Like the Islanders, which we're also going to talk about later, are on an absolute heater, looking like they might not sell Brock Nelson. They might not sell Kyle Palmieri. Provorov that we just went over. Columbus is playing so good that I don't think they're going to end up trading him. Like Dallas probably saw like there's not really a defenseman out there at this point, and some of the teams that have one aren't willing to trade it. So we might as well do something instead of him going to the Winnipeg Jets or the Edmonton Oilers or something like that. They just got ahead of the curve. Yes, maybe they overpaid. I don't think they overpaid that much, but yeah, it was going to cost the first round pick because the scarcity of rentals at this year's deadline. And thankfully that they had the cap space because of Tyler Sagan, that it just made sense. Maybe some other teams weren't able to fit him under and didn't want to give up a first round pick without serious retention that the San Jose Sharks could not provide. So yeah, I do like Dallas just getting ahead of the curve, getting something. Even if it's not the perfect fit, they're loading up. When they're fully healthy, I don't really see how they don't have the best forward core in the entire NHL. With the way that Jason Robertson's been playing of late, Wyatt Johnston from the 15-game mark and on has been awesome. They're going to be an absolute offensive juggernaut. Yes, the defense is shaky. Lyubushkin's been okay for them. I got flamed when I said that he wasn't playing that good by Dallas Stars fans. I'm going to be honest, I haven't watched a ton of Dallas Stars. Recently, Lyubushkin's been playing pretty good. But yeah, I think Cody Ceci is an upgrade for Matt Dumba on that third pair right-handed defenseman. So they do somewhat address a need, not massively. And yeah, I just like it for Dallas. A sizable amount.
I like it okay for Dallas. I mean, I guess I'm really saying, like, you know, in a perfect world, but you're right, that perfect trade doesn't really exist this year. And the way that guys are getting taken off the board really quick, I think anyone who waits after the Four Nations up to the actual trade deadline is going to be left without anything useful to buy.
Yeah, if last year they did this trade when like Chris Tanev was on the market for eventually ended up being just a second round pick, I don't even think the condition on the third hit. Yeah, I'd be like, what the hell are they doing? But when the other options are so bad, especially after Pettersson's gone, I can't blame them for just saying, we're done. We gave up a late first, but we still have a disgusting under 27, under 23 core where we don't really give a shit about a first round pick that's not going to be playing on our team for 3 to 4 years. The time is now. They kept their first round pick last year too, so I think that also kind of opened them up to trading this year. It hasn't been. I don't even know if they've under Jim Nill recently have traded a first round pick at the deadline. They've been kind of conservative with that. Yeah, I think it was Domi in 2023, Tanev in 2024. So yeah, this is their stamp that they're going aggressive, and I don't expect Granlund to resign in Dallas, though. They have too many unrestricted and restricted free agents coming up. With Duchesne yet again. Ben's going to be an unrestricted free agent. Wyatt Johnston, Harley, and Robertson are the following summer. So, yeah, just a clean rental. Maybe they re-sign Cody Ceci, but they're going to have to buy out or trade Dumba because he still has another year at like $3.25 million. Disaster. Everybody knew it in the moment. But, yeah, very, very good for Dallas. And, yeah, if you're an Edmonton Oilers fan or Winnipeg Jets fan, Vegas got a middle sixer. They're set now, but you're kind of panicking. You're kind of panicking, looking around and saying, like, is Anthony Beauvillier for a third going to be like our big deadline acquisition? Because I think most of the guys are probably going to be gone by the Four Nations.
It definitely seems that way with how fast everything's moving. This was the better Dallas trade by far of the weekend for all you NBA fans out there.
Yeah, well, at the end,
no debate about that.
No movies talk, but we will get into that trade because that was absolutely insane. You want to talk about the salary cap exploding in the NHL? Speaking of how Dallas has those unrestricted and restricted free agents, those guys are probably going to want massive raises or massive increase or massive just new deals for the guys coming off ELC, considering the salary cap is now going to $95.5 million this summer, then 104 going up, what is that, $8.5 million in 2026, 2027, and then 113.5 in 2027, 2028. It was expected to be like 93 to 94, then like 99 to 100, then 106 to 107. So it was expected to jump a decent amount, but this is sizable jumps. And if you're an unrestricted or restricted free agent, you're probably licking your chops. Mitch Marner's camp is going absolutely berserk. They probably just went from 12.75 to 13 to wanting 13.5, $13.75 million. The Leon Draisaitl deal, I know that you're not a big fan of Leon Draisaitl, but that's a deal where you thought, okay, that's just like fair market value. He's the highest paid player in the NHL. Now that looks like a pretty good deal, especially considering how good he's been this season. But yeah, it's good news for the NHL that they're in this spot where they can increase the player salary. It's good for the players in general. And it's really going to help some teams out that have their core guys locked up.
Yeah, I expect to see a lot of maybe not the tip-top players who are getting the max salary anyway, but like the very good level guys start taking like 3 or 4 year deals so that they can have another go at things when the cap explodes. Maybe a Natchez type will want, just give me 3 years so I can hit the UFA market again at age 30 when the salary cap's going to be like 113, and then it'll be 120 maybe if it's a year later off that, and just be able to maximize earnings that way. I think hockey's kind of unique compared to the other sports with how many guys want the long term, and I get it. There's
also it's a hard cap, so
there's injury risk involved there, so I understand the appeal of taking guaranteed money. But, I do think maybe the Austin Matthews strategy of never even considering full term might be more and more common within the like 5 to top 25 range of NHL players.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point because Austin Matthews, although it's only 13.25, his next deal is probably going to be 16 to $17 million. So instead of Draisaitl, who signed 8 years, 14, Matthews basically his 8-year deal will be worth, what is that, 15.5, 15.75. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. It's still really tough for guys coming off ELCs that have made less than $3 million in their career to turn down. Like Jack Hughes gets shit on for taking that deal. It's a lot easier said than done when you are coming off your ELC and you have a guaranteed, like you're set for life, especially the NHL where the contracts are 100% guaranteed. But I do agree, the star names, like I'd be worried if I'm an Edmonton Oilers fan that Connor McDavid might just say, yeah, give me a 3-4 year deal. Especially with him, there's no injury risk. He can tear his ACL. He'd still get in his like contract year, he'd still get maximum money, highest paid player in the entire NHL. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. And I think one deal that is like absolutely insane. I had it as my second best deal in the NHL when I did my revised rankings. Nathan McKinnon's 8-year deal at $12.6 million is bonkers, and it's going to continue to look like that. People thought it was insane that he got $100,000 more than Connor McDavid, but yeah, as the salary cap continues to rise, it was amazing because you're seeing Austin Matthews went from 12.6 to 13.25. Then Draisaitl goes to 750,000 ahead of that. So yeah, that deal is looking awesome. A lot of the deals that are long term and locked up, looking damn good. Sam Bennett, Aaron Ekblad in Florida, that's going to be interesting to monitor. I think they could get massive deals. And if I'm Florida, I'm probably not willing to pay that. But yeah, some guys are going to get paid akin to like the 2016 NBA offseason when the TV money really came in.
But even then, it's because of that precedent, and we know what that looks like. It is good that the NHL's smoothing it out. They thought that through. They set limits on how much the cap could increase every year. They're planning it out a couple years in ahead because we don't want to see one summer arbitrarily where everyone signs for these stupid big contracts and then the money dries up the very next year. So the smoothing is good. The other comment I want to make is that no one in the NHL will admit this because no one wants to admit they made a mistake. But a lot of those early cap projections were based on Arizona and their tiny ass arena, and having them move to Utah is a significant part of why you can slightly beat expectations. It's not the entire reason. It's probably not even the main reason, but it's definitely a reason why they're able to beat the projected cap.
They might also be accounting for an Atlanta, Houston
expansion
$1 billion
money, maybe,
coming in. Yeah, because, that's a great point. The NBA didn't stagger it, so it was like one offseason. It was going up like $5 million per year in the early to mid 2010s, and then that 2016 offseason, they signed a new media deal. It went up like $25 million. The famous deal, Solomon Hill got a 4-year deal at $13 million per.
Timofey Mozgov.
Yeah, Mozgov. It was an absolute disaster. Luol Deng, I think, got a deal with the Lakers. That was nuts. Like, it's good the NHL is thinking like that, especially in a hard cap league, to not massively increase like that. Just keep it sustainable. Speaking of Utah, 3 names. They're down to 3 names. It originally was Hockey Club, Mammoth, and the Wasatch for the Mountain Range, but now it's back to Outlaws. I'm Team Mammoth. I think that you go unique with this. Outlaws seems very basic. That seems like it's going to be the most generic AI-generated logo, guy with like the bandana on his head. It's going to be something dorky like that. I don't hate that. I don't hate Hockey Club. It would be okay. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but I don't like the soccer, football club kind of aspect of it. I think you go with Mammoth. I think you go unique, and like everybody will be buying that merch day one. I bought Seattle Kraken stuff just because the Kraken logo is so goddamn cool. I would be in line in Fanatics buying that immediately.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Mammoth is like the only option. Like maybe Utah Hockey Club could be something if you did something fun and creative with the branding. So far, they haven't, right? It's all been boring logos, boring branding, which is weird to me. Like, just because your team name is basic doesn't mean you need to have the most basic logo, the most basic uniform designs. So I think Mammoth is really the only option you have right now off this list. I agree. Outlaws is, if you want to have the same team name as like 4,000 different high school football teams, sure, pick the Outlaws. Like I'm disappointed that Yeti wasn't able to work out. That would have been a fun one.
Venom would have been cool.
Even like, the Blizzard as like a versus the Avalanche type rivalry with the names being weather stuff, I think would have been fun. But of the names they picked, Mammoth by far is my choice.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Thankfully, the fans are voting on it at the game. They're gonna see the three names, see a bunch of hypothetical logos that they might go with. Do the right thing. Pick the Mammoth. Don't mess this up. Speaking of expansion teams, although Utah isn't really an expansion team, Philip Grubauer was placed on waivers by the Seattle Kraken. Him and his contract that has 2 years left at $5.9 million. Has never posted above a 900 in his Seattle career after having that fake Vezina finalist season where he was just carried by the Colorado Avalanche. Had an 866 this year. It's a good thing that they're just finally doing this. They probably should have done this last year after Joey Daccord was really emerging. Now that Joey Daccord has proven back-to-back seasons, it would be lunacy to go into next year with a tandem that's making a combined $11 million for a good starter, but then the worst backup in the entire NHL. He's probably going to keep his job, but like I don't know how Ron Francis has a job after this summer if they're a serious organization.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle, basically every free agent contract they've given out has been a failure. That feels fair to say. Burakovsky's been fine, I guess.
No. He was good his first year. He's kind of fallen off. Injuries has kind of done it in for him.
Relative to, Grubauer or the Chandler Stevenson deal. Not, they've signed like the worst deal in the league 2 of the last 3 summers. It's this is why I say, right, it's so risky to give these goalies with small sample sizes a lot of years because, Grubauer had a nice season. It makes sense that he got paid. It does not make sense to me that you gave him a 5-year commitment. 6-year commitment. Jeez, wow.
Yeah.
6-year commitment for someone with, 2 years of being like a starter?
On one of the best teams in the NHL.
Yeah.
And every underlying number proved that he was just an above average goaltender.
Yeah, and it's, he hasn't been above average, but even if he was above average, I wouldn't like the term on it, really is the issue. I guess the plan is a buyout in the big picture because no one's going to claim him. No one's going to trade for him. His salary, you could bury it in the AHL, but you'd still be paying a majority of it.
$4 million.
The same way like Cal Peterson in his $5 million, they temporarily buried in the AHL and they were still paying 3.5 or something on that. You can't bury the whole contract when it's that big. So Seattle seems directionless right now. They have some nice young pieces, but it's not really like a young core that makes me think, oh, this team's going places soon. I don't buy into their vision at all. I agree with you on Ron Francis. I don't think he has a vision.
Yeah, he right off the bat, he had some solid picks in the expansion draft, but didn't do it like Vegas. He tried to win now, but he didn't really knock the expansion draft out of the park. I always say it like as much as obviously the external factors, you take that 2023 season because it was magical as their second year. It got so many people in the community invested in the Seattle Kraken. But in terms of the on-ice product, it was kind of horrendous for the long term. It was fool's gold to a degree. They were a solid team that year, but I think they also had the most goals scored above expected in the entire NHL. Grubauer was still absolute trash, so it kind of stupidly told management that like, oh, we're going to be a serious threat although they did win a first round that was versus the Colorado Avalanche coming off a cup and Shushkin didn't play. That kind of tricked management into thinking that they were this high-level contender. And then Matty Beniers unfortunately stalled out and some other guys started to regress like Burakovsky. So, yeah, they're just in this really, really bad spot. Now, thankfully, Daccord has come in and kind of salvaged things. If Joey Daccord didn't emerge, if Ottawa protects him in 2021 or something like that, they're a bottom 5, maybe bottom 3 team in the entire NHL right now. But yeah, hopefully they stink the rest of the way, get another top 5 pick, and just kind of commit to stinking the next 2 years.
I mean, that's the risk though, right? Because you were talking earlier in the show about how Dustin Wolf is probably too good of a goalie to truly tank. Is Joey Daccord too good of a goalie to truly tank? I mean, I don't see Seattle falling below the Anaheim, San Jose, Chicago tier at this point.
They got to get lucky with the ping pong balls. Yeah, I think they're probably going to finish 7th or 8th worst.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in when you're trying to be a clearly rebuilding team, but you have a good goalie that gives you a floor. And it's if you're not going to get, especially in this draft, if you're not going to get a top 3 or 4 pick, you have a real issue as far as acquiring like a true A-tier prospect because this draft only has 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, they're just again as we said, they're just in such a bad spot because they went so aggressive this offseason. Montour, Stevenson, 7-year deals. and they're going to easily finish as a bottom 10 team in the entire NHL. It's an absolute disaster in Seattle. They tried to kind of do it on a fly like a Vegas Golden Knights, stay competitive, and massively failed. Do you want to move on to this Vegas Golden Knights? Speaking of which, what a transition. Brandon Saad is heading to the Vegas Golden Knights for only $1.5 million. He mutually terminated his contract with the St. Louis Blues, which I respect the hell out of. He basically said, I want to play hockey. I know I'm owed, I think it was like 5.3 in actual salary over the next season and a half. So a sizable amount. He has made like $55 million in his career. So it's not a drop in the bucket, but it's also something that he can turn down. He's financially stable. And he goes over to Vegas for $1.5 million. I really like the move for Vegas, who don't have a first-round pick in the next 2 drafts, I think, because they decided to keep their one in 2024 because they hosted the draft that we were both at. Yeah, I don't think Vegas is, even though they are very high in the standings, I don't expect them to be like nuclear all in. Last year was kind of that deadline where they went aggressive and they got guys that they had term on their contracts. Maybe they make some minor moves, but I don't think there really even is anything Vegas that's so identifiable that would require a first-round pick. Their top 6 is pretty loaded. They have a 3-headed defenseman monster. Aiden Hill's a stud. So yeah, this is kind of their deadline move. And they got it for free. It's pretty awesome for Vegas, who continues to be one of the most innovative teams in the NHL.
I don't love the move on ice, really. It doesn't move me one way or the other is the issue. My issue with Brendan Saad is he's the kind of player who, if he's not scoring goals, he's not really doing anything out there, which is not really what you want in a contender's bottom 6.
I think he might be playing second line. You look at that, it's like Olofsson on the second line.
Yeah, I mean, Vegas does have bad wing depth. I get that. And, I do think Saad will be better than he's shown. Career 16% shooter in St. Louis coming into this season. This season, he's shooting 9%. I don't think he got like 10 years older over the last summer. That's going to bounce back up to his average on its own. He will improve some, but I don't think it's like an amazing fit just because he's such a one-dimensional type guy to add. Although, granted, like you said, when that one dimension is goal-scoring wing and Vegas doesn't have a ton of those, it's a fine ad. I do agree with you that, it's good for them to be creative. They're not going to see any trade option that's even worth a first-round pick. Might as well keep your second then, whatever you have left. Look for really cheap options. Edmonton especially has made a living off the last couple of years of bringing in one-year signings mid-season. So Vegas trying to replicate that. I don't love it. I don't think it moves the needle as far as me thinking of them as a contender, which I do think they're a contender, not the top one, but I think they're up there. But I do see vision at least in this move.
It's a low risk.
Medium reward.
Medium reward. Yeah, and as you were saying, like if he went to Dallas, if he went to Edmonton, where he would be in a bottom 6 role, I'd be a little bit concerned. But considering Vegas does have a severe winger problem, and some of their wingers can't really stay healthy. If Mark Stone is heading to the LTIR, they're going to need someone like that to step up in a big way. I like it a lot. I like it a sizable amount. The Vegas Golden Knights. Okay, next up, goaltender extension. We have Logan Thompson signing a 6-year deal at $5.85 million, only making $767,000 this year. Insane, absolutely insane value. And I think that this extension is also insane value when you look at the fact that on a per game basis, has probably been the best goalie in the entire NHL. Second best goalie overall because Hellbuck's played a lot more games. But yeah, he has a 22-2-3 record with a .925 save percentage, like 26 goals saved above expected. This is awesome. He's only 27 years old, so this does take him into his early, mid-ish 30s. But when you look at some of the other recent deals that go deep into guys' 30s, and even when you compare it to his cap hit next season, the 2 guys below him are Tristan Jarry and Elvis Merzlikins. The 2 guys above him is who we talked about before, in Philip Grubauer and Jordan Binnington. So yeah, he's well below the guys that recently signed big-time extensions like Ullmark, Swayman, Ottinger. And you could say that those guys had a longer track record, but Logan Thompson was a good 1A, 1B in Vegas for a long time. This year has been awesome. Do I think that he is a no doubt top 5 goalie in the entire NHL? No. But for Washington to get this done now instead of maybe play out the entire season, he has some good playoff run. It probably would have went up to 6.5, 6.75, gets nominated for the Vezina, which is looking very likely at this point. Damn good. And then by them locking this up, I thought that first, it was going to be some kind of like 6-7 year deal at $6.57 million. And as a result, Charlie Lindgren probably would have had to be gone, who's been amazing for them basically the last calendar year for the most part, last 365 days when he really turned it on to get them into the playoffs. But now Lindgren can arguably come back. He'd get more on the open market, but the Capitals can easily give him some kind of like 3-4 year deal at $3 to $4 million. So awesome work by the Capitals, who continue to be in the last year probably the best management group in the entire NHL. Locking up Thompson. They got guys like Strome locked up, Protas locked up, Sandin locked up. They're truly building. They don't have much star talent, but every single player, it seems like, outside of maybe PLD, is on a damn good contract.
You know what I'm going to say here, because I need to be consistent. It's risky. No matter how good Logan Thompson has been this year, this is just the third season that he's hit the 30 games played mark.
That's fair.
Giving a 6-year contract to someone who's had like 3 half seasons of NHL hockey with some scattered, filled in for 15 games as the backup behind Fleury and Robin Lehner years and years ago. It's a risk no matter how good he is. That said, I do agree that the price seems really good, and I agree that, I understand why you want to do this now. My main complaint with a lot of these extensions is why bother doing it now when you could have waited till the end of the year? There's a super good reason for that for Logan Thompson. If you wait until the end of the year, he finishes second in the Vezina and or you make the Stanley Cup Finals, that price tag might be starting with a 7 maybe. Mm-hmm. Maybe not $7 million for 6 years, but the price tag might start at that huge number. So I don't love it because there's always, with goalies, there is almost always that risk of inconsistency, but this seems like as good of a deal as Washington could have hoped for. Like you said, they've been phenomenally managed at signing up a bunch of these guys long-term. Vegas really fumbled the bag here on Thompson. Mm-hmm. That trade didn't make sense to me last summer, and it makes less than no sense to me now. They had a really good 1B goalie on a league minimum contract and shipped him out to bring in a worse goalie who they're paying more. Made no sense to me.
I think he did want out, but yeah, even with him wanting out, considering he was making $760,000 to only be able to get 2 third-round picks was absolutely crazy. But yeah, continue.
He's one of the best value contract in the league easily, right? If we're talking like player WAR divided by dollar given, easily. Logan Thompson by far the best contract in the league at this second.
Yeah. And again, 13th highest cap hit next year. Now again, there's not a ton of guys that are going to be up and pass him in the relative future compared to maybe years past where guys would pass him. But again, 13th highest cap hit. I think you got to have him in your top 10 at this point. And although I agree, there is some age risk and not track record, but he's 27. It's not like he's 29, 30, where we see guys like Jack Campbell, Darcy Kemper signed at 31, even though he's playing very good right now, where there is like serious age risk. Goalies tend to hit their prime at around 27, 28 years old. It's not skaters where it's 24, 25 you really start to enter it. So this guy is potentially entering his prime. And I'm not saying his prime is going to be this every single season, but in terms of being a consistent 912 to 915 guy, that's all he needs. He just needs to be like a 908 guy for this to be a good contract.
Yeah,
he just needs to be slightly above average. That's the crazy thing.
I think he probably will be. It's just, there's a chance, not a huge chance, maybe a 10 to 20% chance that, you mentioned the guys in his price range, Jari and Grubauer, guys who are literally getting put on waivers or sent to the minors, 4 years into a 6-year contract.
Yeah, Jari is a decent comparison because Jari did kind of hit the ground running with Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
his
Jari
first 4 years was like
younger than this when he signed, right?
Yeah, it was like about the same age. It was like a 9-15 in 4 seasons. Now the underlying numbers did kind of show that part of that, a decent amount of that, was being on such a good team. But he was an above average guy. Got paid 5 years, $5.375 million, and it has aged poorly. I'm definitely more pro this deal. You are too. You're pro it as well. But I think it's going to be good, and it definitely is going to be interesting to see what Vegas potentially has to give to Adin Hill now, because this was before the salary cap announcement, and maybe teams knew about that ahead of time. But if I'm Adin Hill and I won the Stanley Cup, I have a little bit of a longer track record than Logan Thompson, maybe not better this season. If I hit the open market, I could get 7x7, 7.75.
I think whoever gives that contract will regret it hard.
I think that one will be objectively a bad deal. But I'm just saying, like, Adin Hill is definitely licking his chops now, considering Logan Thompson is locked up and other guys that are struggling like Swayman And I'm trying to think. Well, Sorokin's playing much better of late. But yeah, Swayman has been struggling a decent amount where he's looking at it and saying, I want an absolute massive deal.
I believe you that the goalie market's going to get, maybe crazy with this cap increase, but I think that's just going to lead to more bad contracts.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, because a lot of the guys are locked up now. It's going to be like when Stolarz comes up next summer for the Toronto Maple Leafs, if they want to retain him, it's going to be an obscene amount of money. It's going to be very interesting to see what guys like Dustin Wolf get this summer. I think I made a video on it. I think the Calgary Flames should give him like an 8 by 7.5, 7.75 July 1st.
That's risky too.
But he's like 23, 24, and
he
has
is
dominated
very young.
every single level. Like he won AHL Goalie of the Year and MVP Goalie of the Year back-to-back years. I think he's a guy that you lock the hell up. Gustafsson, I'd probably wait on July 1st. I would not hand Gustafsson some kind of massive bag considering his inconsistencies.
Yeah, Gustafsson can be a good goalie. We've seen him, for stretches be like a top 5 goalie if you stop the season right now. But he's not the kind of goalie, and most goalies aren't, who can consistently put up those numbers.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You want to talk about Pietrangelo?
Yes, I do.
Passing up on Four Nations. So yeah, this was like right after we recorded, so it feels like forever ago at this point. This was Sunday when it was announced that Pietrangelo would not be playing in Four Nations. So naturally, you thought that he was going to miss the next 2 weeks for the Vegas Golden Knights, get a full 3 to 4 weeks. Understandable, perfectly reasonable. I definitely understand players prioritizing the Stanley Cup, what they actually get paid for, and what is way more important than the Four Nations face-off, we're going to be honest, although I'm looking forward to it a lot. Yeah, he says he's not participating in it. He's got a lingering injury. Then he's playing like 22, 23 minutes a night. It's a horrible look for the NHL. I don't think it's going to happen with any of their star players, but it's just, I don't blame the Vegas Golden Knights for doing this and Pietrangelo for doing this, but it makes the tournament look completely Mickey Mouse and just like optional participation trophy.
I agree. I mean, it's, this killed like half of my enthusiasm for the Four Nations. Like they made captain announcements like 2 days later, and like I just couldn't care less at this point. What this tells me is that some of the guys, definitely not all of them, but some of the guys clearly look at this as an all-star game with extra steps and not a real international tournament. I assume a lot of the younger guys are super invested because this is their first chance at best on best hockey. But someone like Pietrangelo, who played in the Olympics before, clearly does not see this as a real tournament that really counts.
Yeah, that's a great point, that Pietrangelo has won a gold medal. So for him, it's like, I've more than enough represented my country.
He's also won a Stanley Cup, though. He's won 2 Stanley Cups. So it's prioritizing the Stanley Cup over this tournament makes sense. But like, if you already have 2, you don't need to do that.
Sure, and I am sure that he has some type of lingering injury that he can play through NHL games, but getting those 2 weeks would be important. But yeah, I guess he's just saying, screw that.
Yeah, I mean, the NHL wants the fans to care more about the Canada versus USA Four Nations game than they do about a Vegas versus Dallas regular season game in February. For the NHL, they would much rather have him play in the international one than the Vegas one. So yeah, it's a bad look for them. It does make the tournament feel less legit and less important.
It is weird how they're not doing anything though, because for the All-Star game, they suspend you for the next game if you optionally.
In fact, they came out publicly and said we're not going to be doing any kind of suspending people for not showing up here.
I pray that none of this, that no one else pulls this, and at least if someone does pull this, they miss like 2, 3, or the game right before. Like
at
I
least
can understand that
it's a real injury, right?
That I absolutely. Maybe Pietrangelo will miss a couple games down the stretch here, but once you're out, you gotta be out. Like you can't be logging to. Like I was in genuine shock. I think I threw up an Instagram story being like, "Is that Pietrangelo on the ice?" I was like, "What? Number 7? Like what the hell? How is he playing?" It's just.
He's played every game this week with no real change to his minutes load. He's clearly healthy and just skipping it. I don't really. Everyone, right? It's hockey. Everyone's a little bit banged up, but he's clearly okay to play and just doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's something that's been lingering on for a while. So just when they were deciding the team, you should have spoken up and said something.
I agree with that too. Like, why let them announce you if you weren't planning to go? Or
It's going to be interesting, and we'll see who they. I think they still haven't announced the replacement. It's probably going to be Uyghur or Doughty. Maybe Doughty doesn't want to go because he's come. If I'm Doughty, I wouldn't want to. I mean, I would want to go, but like I definitely understand if he's like, I don't want to go. I just got healthy
Yeah,
again.
he just got healthy
yeah,
after a huge injury.
me-
Doughty's another guy with real Olympic
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. If I'm Doughty, I'm not absolutely jumping at the opportunity. I think Uyghur is probably the best pick just in terms of a guy. We talked about it. He should have been on the team to begin with. A guy that can play both ways and is just as reliable as it gets for Team Canada. Evan Bouchard is more talented, but he also makes dumb plays. And
Uyghur also, his real NHL team, yes, they're potentially in a playoff spot, but it feels like he would have more to play for Team Canada than for the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, the wild card race down the stretch. Speaking of the wild card race, my New York Islanders can't stop winning. It's like a team of destiny at this point. They've won 7 straight games after bringing in Tony DeAngelo. He has 2 points in 4 games. He's playing 25-33 a night. I tweeted out last night, Lou got a #1 defenseman for the league minimum. It's amazing. And he actually has a +5 expected goals percentage with him on the ice compared to off it. They've been much better with him. Perunovic has 2 goals in 3 games. We're not going to break down that trade. It was a 5th-round pick. Nice little buy low for the New York New York Islanders for a guy that was great in college, won the Hobie Baker, and just hadn't really been able to solidify himself on a veteran St. Louis Blues team. And they also got Adam Boquist, who scored a goal. It's been really fun to watch. It's been some of the most fun Islanders hockey, and I think part of it is because they're just bringing in these puck-moving, fast defensemen. It's not boring hockey. They're actually being pretty creative with stretch passes and so on. They're fun. They're a fun team, and again, are they going to win the Stanley Cup? Are they going to go on some kind of deep run? No, but they're screwed regardless. They're mid as fuck regardless, so you might as well be rooting for them. Now, Matt Barzal got hurt last night, took a puck to the knee, might have fractured his kneecap for all we know. But yeah, this has been an amazing run. Noah Dobson is bleeding millions of dollars by the second because Tony DeAngelo has been just straight up better than him in 4 games than Dobson was throughout this entire season. It's great to watch. And Lou Lamoriello, as crazy as it is to say, I think should be in Jim Gregory discussions.
No.
Because he's salvaging the season with these moves.
No.
Saplakov's been great. Hogberg, who they brought in, I believe they brought him in this summer, had like a .952 for 6 games when Sorokin was stinking. He stabilized the team. Duclair hasn't been great, but again, Saplakov in this decor. Sorokin's back to form 6-1. The Islanders are back, baby. I believe.
You know, I want to argue with you so badly, but on this one thing, I do have to give it to Lou, right? Because he's managed to acquire 3 different offensive defensemen with real potential and upside for basically nothing, right? These 3 guys combined, no real assets given, right? DeAngelo, Boquist, Perunovic. They all have upside there. We've seen Tony D's upside. Boquist was a lottery pick, was the centerpiece in the Seth Jones trade. There were things that he did as a prospect that made people think this guy's legit.
Half a point per game season in like 45 games or something like that a while back.
Perunovic, like you said, good numbers in college, even if he never stuck with the Blues. And it's exactly what the Islanders needed to introduce some offense to the blue line. I think you made some overstatements towards the end there about how well Lou has built this team. But on this one issue of, what if we bring in 3 puck-moving defensemen without having to actually give up anything useful or important? Impressive work. Can't lie.
Yeah. Again, Palak, Dobson, now Barzal hurt. You thought 3 weeks ago that the season was dead. And again, you could argue that the season being dead and them getting a high draft pick and selling Brock Nelson might be better for the future of the team. I definitely understand you. But I don't want to say that they're going to go on some kind of run. But the East is, as we talked about before, outside of Florida, nobody scares me. And yeah, even if they stunk it up, they still, like a Seattle Kraken, weren't going to end up, unless the lottery ping pong balls fell in their favor, they were going to end up being the 8th to 10th worst team. So yeah, it's fun to watch. The Bo Horvat trade was kind of a point of no return for my New York Islanders in terms of just committing to this core. And I wouldn't hate the idea of shipping Noah Dobson out for Elias Pettersson, Noah Dobson plus at this point, to just say screw it and try to be more aggressive. Might as well double down and buy low on some kind of guy like a Pettersson, maybe someone else, maybe a Brock Besser if they're selling him still. It's an interesting time to be a New York Islanders fan.
This all does make me think that Dobson probably isn't in their long-term plans. Because if you can find a guy off the waiver wire, or I guess
Not
like
Russia.
what the international free agent
Yes.
wire, it was technically a through waivers process. I think.
Yeah,
I'm
you
not
had to go on
sure the
waivers.
logistics there. But functionally a waiver wire pickup outproducing Dobson in the Dobson role.
Romanov's
That
been
guy's going to
looking
want
way
a
better.
$7 million contract at least. What are you paying him that much for?
Yeah, like I think I'd give Dobson like a 3-year deal at $5.5 million right now.
And if he doesn't want it, trade those rights.
Yeah, you would get a decent amount. Because like Noah Dobson in a reduced second pair right-handed defenseman role. Like if he went to Vancouver, running a second power play would be very, very valuable for them. But yeah, if you're Noah Dobson's agent, you got to be pretty disappointed. It's going to be very interesting today. Florida Panthers, the backup is going today. Skarek, I think is how you pronounce it. Some weird spelling. But yeah, if they win this game, I'm all aboard. 7 straight. If they sweep the Florida back-to-back, it would be absolutely insane. And Tony D getting the overtime winner in that game, I unfortunately was out. I wasn't watching live. But when I saw like the goal alert come up, I creamed my pants basically.
That's great.
Like,
I hope Tony D keeps playing well, and then Lou gives him a 7-by-7. I hope that happens to the Islanders.
That would be a disaster. They lock him up. If they sign Tony D to a 2-year deal at $2.5 million tomorrow, I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't hate it. Like he's been fine, especially with Romanov. I don't think he's an actual number 1 defenseman or a legit top pair guy, but he does offer. Like in Carolina, not really Philadelphia, but in Carolina, they have other good defensemen, puck-moving defensemen, and just overall forward talent where like Tony D's offense wasn't really that much needed. For the New York Islanders, they need a player like him so bad, and he is very dynamic offensively that you can live with some of the defensive lapses. And yeah, just going back to it, just seeing Sorokin all the way back, it appears like is the main takeaway here. He's yet again great. I will be moving him up a lot in my updated goalie rankings this summer. I need to light a fire under his ass by putting him like 12th. But yeah, it's awesome to watch. Probably still gonna make the playoffs and lose in the first round, but this is far more fun than prior years.
I don't think they'll make it still, but I do agree, right? At least they're playing like a fun to watch
And
brand of hockey.
it's so bonkers because again, 3 weeks ago they had a 47% points percentage, absolutely out of it.
Very worst power play, like not literally in the history of the league, but it sure felt that way sometimes.
I think they're on pace for the worst
combined special teams.
Yes, combined. And now, not saying they've been actually, I think they did have like a 90% penalty kill in January. But yeah, it's when there's zero expectations, that's like the best time to be a fan, if that makes sense. When you have like, especially like coming out of a rebuild and like right now with the Islanders is perfect fandom, this kind of run. Because if they lose today, I'll be sad, but I'll be like, that was an amazing run. It's great. It's absolutely great, even though if the long-term future isn't that great. But we're going to move on. You want to go back to Michkov? You had some choice words on Michkov getting benched.
I have more strong feelings on this. I do. I got the notes out, right? Everyone should already know that Torts was the wrong coach for Michkov. But Michkov playing 8 minutes against the Islanders this past week really hammered home for me how this is not about Michkov or his play, because he's a phenomenal player. This is about Torts trying to keep a young star in check, limit any egos, which is weird because by all accounts, Michkov said all the right things. He said like, oh, I like Torts as a coach. It's fun that he's hard on me. I have no ego about this. And Torts insists on benching him anyway for 1 goal against that really wasn't necessarily his fault. Bobby Brink on that second goal the Islanders had was created because Bobby Brink did a horrible job defending a stretch pass. Did you see Bobby Brink get benched? No. Michkov was benched being a -1. He was on ice for 1 goal allowed in that loss. Jamie Drysdale was on ice for all 3 goals allowed. He's a young talent. Did you see Jamie Drysdale get benched? No, you didn't. This is clearly a personal, direct thing that Torts does, and we've seen him do it before in other places where he goes at the one young stud type guy. The Philadelphia Flyers are not a very talented team right now. They have a lot of young players who are making a lot of mistakes. Somehow, Michkov is the only one who ever seems to get blamed for it by Torts, the only one who ever seems to get in Torts' doghouse. And it's not good for the Flyers as a franchise anyway, right? If you want to take a team that has no offensive talent and try to squeeze them to an 8 seed, Torts is your guy. He almost did that last year. If you need to acquire more top 5, top 10 picks, Torts is going to do the opposite of everything you need. He's the wrong coach for Philly. He's the wrong coach for Michkov. Briere, I'm begging you to end this now before it's too late, before Michkov wants out.
Yeah, I said this a couple months ago, and when I said that like Tortorella should be on the hot seat, they called me insane. He is like the definition of nowadays used to be a really good coach. Right now, he's the definition of like a high floor, low ceiling kind of coach. And again, the Philadelphia roster is not that impressive. But yeah, just watching shit like that happen to Michkov, and especially that one, like Michkov was jawing back at him. It looked like he was pretty pissed. Obviously said the right things in the media, but it's just unfortunate because similarly to a Calgary Flames, but even worse in my opinion, it just seems like Philadelphia, unless they truly commit and fire Torts, they are just going to be this bottom 7 to 12 team the next couple of years. Unless they somehow get lucky with the ping pong balls, and nobody has really taken massive steps under him. I guess Travis Konechny has really found his game after having a great first 2 years, 3 years to his career, lulled a little bit, has gotten back up with Tortorella.
I look at Cates, I guess, as a guy who, like, that's a Torts player, and maybe a different type of coach wouldn't get so much out of Noah Cates. But to me, that's kind of like the only example you have of like a young guy showing real improvement.
Yeah, Cam York, I was really excited for like a year or two ago. He has not really progressed. Like Ristolainen has bounced back his stock, but you don't really give a shit about Ristolainen.
Ristolainen's stock doesn't matter. Cam York's stock is what matters for this franchise, you know?
Yeah, it's a weird time to be a Philadelphia Flyers fan because Torts is a very old school coach, and if you are one of those boomer fans, you probably love him. But for the sake of the rebuild, for the sake of the future, I think you're right. It probably is time to move off him and get some kind of young guy that's maybe more of a player's coach, and hopefully they can land a high pick.
Hopefully.
All right, Kaprizov and Heiskanen. We'll kind of touch on both. Heiskanen's thankfully is only like week to week after Mark Stone. The Mark Stone thing, I don't think it was malicious. Rupe Hintz clearly hit his leg/skate. He was probably trying to sell that a little bit, and then Heiskanen's leg was just dangling out, and he caught it. Definitely not good. Definitely was falling over, losing his balance, but I don't think it's some like suspendable offense that people are acting like Vegas is the worst team of all time. But it's Vegas, so that's why they overreacting in that way. If this was, I'm trying to think, if this was, I don't even know, it's just some likable team. Yeah, someone on the Columbus Blue Jackets doing this, they would not have the same reaction. But yeah, regarding that, and then for Kaprizov, they're shutting him down at least for now. He's getting surgery, probably going to be out like at least 4 weeks, I think minimum. That definitely stinks. Minnesota got dogged last night against Ottawa. I think they'll still make the playoffs. Just rest up Kaprizov. He clearly was not the same guy when he returned, and he's the franchise. Just take it slow and steady. Thankfully, the Four Nations break. He'll only miss, hopefully, like 6 to 8 games. But yeah, what's your thoughts on those?
Agree that Stone's play was not dirty. I mean, he was falling over. He went for the puck. Like, he did, in fact, get the puck with his stick. It was like a weird, ugly-looking poke check, but it was like a sincere attempt at one that also got the body. A tripping penalty and no suspension is absolutely the right way to call that. Heiskanen, again, the big loser here is not the NHL team because Dallas will be fine and he'll come back eventually. The Four Nations team is absolutely cooked without him. Finland was already by far the least talented roster, and now this is happening to them. That's really rough. Kaprizov's injury, Minnesota also I expect to still make the playoffs, but if he's not 100%, they're not going anywhere. Matt Boldy, someone commented that, Matt Boldy's on a hot streak, 0 points in the 3 games since Kaprizov's been back out. I think Boldy's a solid player, but he has not really looked like a first liner without Kaprizov there to boost him up.
Yeah, he's a one-man offense. He's literally a one-man offense, and they're definitely going to need him at 100%. That's kind of it from an NHL perspective. NBA, Doncic to the Lakers. I thought it was fake. I had to triple check Sham's Twitter to make sure it wasn't. It's one of the dumbest, most dumbfounding trades of all time. How the Dallas Mavericks didn't like gauge the entire market. Apparently, they talked to like the Lakers and one other team and settled on Anthony Davis, 32 years old, injury prone as hell, and just 1 first-round pick. Not even like pick swaps. I don't even know what picks the LA Lakers have to give up, but just get like pick swaps, 2028, 2030, and all that. It's absolutely bonkers. If you trade Luka Doncic, you should just be blowing it up. Kyrie Irving, AD core in the year 2025. Klay Thompson as well. They ain't going to do jack shit.
Yeah, I mean it's confusing when they try to call it a win now move and then make their roster worse now.
It is a better fit, but yeah, the talent gap between Luka Doncic and AD is so big.
At this point, it's huge. And, you know, Anthony Davis is older by a lot. He has all of the same injury and conditioning concerns that Doncic has. You know, Anthony Davis hasn't stayed healthy consistently. Just like a deeply confusing trade. Everyone's always rushing to be like, oh, what's the comp for other sports? There really is no comp, right? How often does a 25-year-old top 5 player in the league get traded for a package that clearly is well beneath him?
Yeah, it's the Dallas Mavericks general manager is the most hated man in Dallas, most hated man in Texas right now. It's mind-numbing. And the funniest thing is, like, people are tweeting it out like, you can never make fun of a dumb Laker fan, like, hypothetical trade now. Because, like, for years, like, they're getting every single player and we'd laugh at them. They literally just got Luka Doncic for decaying Anthony Davis and 1 first-round pick.
My mom was reading about this in the morning newspaper, and she was like, oh my God, they traded Luka? I thought he was really good.
Yeah,
like people who don't really follow basketball and just kind of casually are aware of the top 10 names are like, that's insane. Why would they do that?
Yeah, and the Lakers, Luka and LeBron, I'm not sure that's the best fit.
No, I don't think so either.
But I mean, if you're the Lakers, like, I think LeBron might get traded now to Golden State or somewhere else, just because, like, you do this trade not because of team fit this year. You do it because you can build around Luka Doncic for the next decade probably, and he's gonna be a top 20 player of all time. It's genuinely mind-boggling. It's one of those deals. Like, you look at the Paul George for SGA and picks, and although that was arguably one of the worst deals in the entire NBA history, maybe before this one, considering it turned into, I think, Jalen Williams, SGA, and they still have pick swaps and picks galore. At least that made sense. That was the LA Clippers fully going forward in the moment. I definitely thought it was a little bit too much to give up. Maybe I liked SGA a lot when he got drafted by my Hornets and then traded immediately after. I had some choice words for that, but it's ridiculous. Then we traded him for fucking Miles Bridges. But yeah, that deal, at least in the moment, you thought everybody thought LA Clippers were going to be a serious contender in the next 3 to 4 years. That obviously blew up. This just makes no sense now, makes no sense in the future. Doesn't make them better in terms of talent this year, especially in a conference with OKC that's looking like the favorite in the Western Conference. It's not like it's a West that's completely open for grabs. Disaster. The Dallas Mavericks. Dallas Mavericks fans are going to be migrating over to the Dallas Stars. But yeah, that's it. You got anything else?
No, that's the show.
All right, we'll be seeing you in the next one. I think this is the longest one ever. Peace.